If you're not training your people on AI right now, like if you really have still waiting around, I think that you are potentially putting even their employment at risk.
Today, I'm joined by Riley Coleman, design leader, trustworthy AI specialist, and founder of AI Flywheel.
They would actually hire someone who is more junior, who has AI skills, than they would take a senior person who doesn't have AI skills.
With over a decade of experience leading design teams across Australia and Europe, Riley is now at the forefront of ethical AI.
You need to look whether or not your interactions are actually being saved and used for training of their actual model.
She's passionate about helping designers build AI literacy to future-proof their careers and drive responsible innovation.
Every single AI, whether it's generative, whether it's old school, is a prediction engine.
If you're curious about how AI could reshape your role or your team's future, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. It's obviously going to be a fun conversation because we're both passionate about AI and design. So I think it'd be good.
Sure.
But give me a backstory on who you are.
Yeah, so I have been working in design for the last, probably 12 odd years, depends how you kind of define it. And I have been leading teams for about the last 9. So in Australia, but also most recently in Berlin and then Amsterdam. I've been doing that for a while. I am a complete tech nerd. As well as, really, I have a lot of empathy and a lot of sort of wanting to sort of make sure that we sort of, that I always walk, a pathway that sort of helps the most vulnerable people or protects them, etc. I started my career in not-for-profit and then sort of moved into design. I have recently moved over into ethical AI and sort of building a new company based on that to help, teach other people how to do it. I love it. I am a total nerd when it comes into AI and experimenting and all that sort of jazz. So, it's a kind of a great, really well-suited sort of niche of where I feel like I feel like I'm really sort of in alignment with who I am and the way I kind of think and the things that get me excited. So yeah, it's really great.
I love it. Like there's so much crossover about what you do and what I love doing as well. Like my background's tech. So run recruitment companies, always worked with like tech startups, and AI is just like that next evolution of cool shit that's just going to change everything. So I geek out on it. I build it. I play with it. I do anything I can with it. So like we started with design. So what I want to ask you is, do you think companies are currently failing their design teams with not training them on AI as fast as they should be or upskilling them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're not only failing their own team, but I think they're failing their customers or their clients, honestly. Because first and foremost, if you're not training your people on AI right now, like if you really have still waiting around, I think that you are potentially putting even their employment at risk, because very soon a lot of companies will start to see, falling by the wayside over the next couple of years who have not made that transition. And I say that not to be a scaremongering, because I hate all that sort of scaremongering, but really and honestly, the people who are actually really being AI literate and, those people who are really forward leaning and using it across their ways of working, etc., the gap is accelerating because it's an exponential change, right? Because if you've actually enabled yourself with AI and can use it in multiple different ways in totally different dimensions, it's not just about efficiency. It's actually about quality, and it's about better creativity and all that sort of thing together. So honestly, the acceleration, once you get to a certain point, like it takes a little bit to get that sort of start and get sort of, working to a level where you actually feel confident, etc. But once that happens, it's like a absolute accelerator that keeps on giving. Like it really is the gift that keeps on giving. So if you are still waiting for that, then I think, you're not only sort of doing yourself a disservice as a company owner, but also your customers, particularly if you're launching and deploying AI services to your customers, then doing so in a way that is not producing harm. So whether it's from bias or from breaches of privacy or things like that, are going to be becoming more and more important as Australia moves, particularly from a voluntary code of AI into a mandatory one, which they're currently working on right now, similar to the EU, right? So yeah, and that's where I've come from. So at the moment, I'm a bit ahead of the game in terms of that because of coming from the EU and their sort of governance around that. But yeah, Australia is certainly heading in the same direction as we speak, actually.
Go back to like not wanting to fearmonger, but like I've actually seen similar trends in technology in the past, not as obviously big and impactful as AI is going to be, but like I remember back when I was working with tech startups, I'd start adopting things like DevOps or DevSecOps or things that like it was new to the industry. It was a new job title, a new like specialty area,
Yeah.
and they would like perfect something, and then all of a sudden a bank would go, "Oh, we could use this," and they would just start hiring up all of the highly skilled
saturating
people.
anyone who knows about it, right?
Yeah, right. And but what will happen is on the reverse side of that, if let's say you're working in an enterprise and you're not upskilling with AI because there's no AI led projects and there's no formal training and you're waiting for your company to provide it for you, you're going to get to a point where the company makes a decision. It's like, oh shit, we're not AI first, and we need a whole bunch of new designers that are AI led and understand, and they can come in and upskill our team or upskill us or like implement it into projects. And all of the people that haven't been using AI are now behind the eight ball. So they're
Yeah,
either
for
going
sure.
to lose their jobs because they're going to have to be replaced because the company failed them to a degree.
Mm.
So look, it's a bit of a scary thing. Like if you're not upskilling yourself, you are falling behind. And if the company is not upskilling you, it's still your job to go and upskill in the background because it will flip, and it'll flip pretty quickly. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 12 months, but it'll happen.
Well, there was research out by LinkedIn and Microsoft earlier this year that actually interviewed, I think it was 30 odd thousand people around the world about their AI use, including leaders. So they had like ICs and leaders, and they asked some questions about all different types of things, from using it to all that sort of stuff. But one of the things that they asked leaders is actually about, their recruitment practices and how they're actually, firstly, are they training their people? But secondly, are they changing what they're looking for? And I can't remember the numbers. I'm going to do it at this service, but it was in the 60s and 70s for these two things. One was that they're looking for people to actually come in with AI skills. They're actually preferring people who actually come in already trained in AI.
Yeah.
I've been talking to a few people who are out of work at the moment, who are old, mates or colleagues, and saying, look, I can help you to actually get that up to speed now. Don't wait, because actually it's going to make you more employable. And the second stat, which was even, I guess, more concerning for people who are either out of work or people who are, thinking about moving jobs or even just in their current job, but they would actually hire someone with less skills in the whatever they're looking for. So whether it's design or sales or whatever, they would actually hire someone who is more junior, who has AI skills, than they would take a senior person who doesn't have AI skills. So it's going way beyond just waiting around anymore. Like, this is your ability to actually have bread and butter on the table consistently for the rest of your career. It's not going away, and it is something that, if your company's not investing in you, firstly, invest in yourself, and secondly, maybe start looking for another company.
Well, luckily we're investing in all of our staff. That's how we obviously got connected. I'm going hard on it. Like, I think everyone needs to upskill. So like, how are we best equipping our staff, although they're working on site with the client, but we want to make sure that if they're not working on AI projects, they're getting some AI skills and like training and development outside of that, because we want to be able to go, this is where to look, this is what to do, this is how to upskill. And then when the time comes, we'll roll them onto an AI project because it's coming. But this is a really good starting point. Like, what's the first step? What's the foundation of building some AI literacy into an average designer, or just a designer that hasn't started playing with it yet? Like, where do you start? Like, it's a big black box.
Yeah, for sure. So there's probably three layers for someone in design or someone who's working in technology itself. So design, and I'd say product and things like that. So people who are actually, so there's the same AI literacy that everyone needs, no matter what your job is. So that is sort of foundational skills in being able to actually, work, write prompting, that actually gets the results that you want, to be able to do it consistently, to give it feedback, to be able to validate outputs, because, large language models are not truth-telling machines, they are storytelling machines. And so you really have to fact check a lot of stuff as well. And
Fantasy
so,
content writers.
yeah, so you really need those real foundational skills. And once you learn them, like there is a lot of training out there. And for me personally, I think it is way too technical. Like, I spent my summer holidays when ChatGPT came out actually doing an advanced prompting course, and oh my god, it was so many different what were the acronyms that tried to tell you how to do things. But like, when I boiled it down, and I'd been doing like thousands of hours of experimenting, etc., I kind of finally realized that they're trying to tell you to try and remember something, and the way that they're teaching it makes it feel awkward. Like, it's not making it feel natural or turn it into something natural, right? And so if it doesn't feel intuitive, people are far less likely to actually try and do it. And so I kind of flipped it on its head and sort of went, okay, you have to change the way you think about it, and that thinking change actually makes it more intuitive. And once you get really sort of using it from that perspective, it actually makes it a lot easier to approach prompting and feedback and all that sort of stuff, because you start to get into the rhythm of how it's supposed to go. Because if you approach it like you approach all other technology, it's going to fail, because it does not work fundamentally at all like other technology. And if you don't have that element down, all the rest of the stuff anyone tells you is kind of going to go, largely over your head, or you're not going to see how to sort of put it in place. So, I focus purely on, or largely on, those skills that are going to be enduring, because that's the other thing I realized very quickly, and I'm sure you have too, is that technology is changing far quicker than we've ever seen before, ever.
Yeah.
And so trying to teach people about a piece of technology is ridiculous, because it's changed with, like, I do a training course, and I've actually I've built mine in a way with the deliberate intent, knowing that I'd have to update it. And I've updated it in 4 months. I've updated it 11 times. Because the technology is moving that quickly. Ability for us to actually train basing on, what are those foundational skills that are going to be needed no matter what. So whether you're not using a large language model, whether you're using, a visual tool like Leonardo or DALL-E or something like that, you still need those foundational skills. It's just about what you're applying it to, right? And so those are sort of the ones that I focus on, as well as some real game changers. So the thing I get most excited about is to actually get people to, because I designed it to be, what's the best onboarding we could have? So because it takes a while, you're like, I don't know, and you kind of fall back to your old ways of doing things, etc. And so I want to kind of get people as excited and closest to value as quickly as possible. So I sort of also teach them a bit of, some game changers in terms of, thinking about it as like collective intelligence. And if you know how to tap into it, you can do anything. Like, I've started this, I've never run my own company, and I've had to do, in the last 8 months, I've had to do more things that I have never done in my entire career than I have done things that I know how to do. And it's been with AI as my true partner, because I've understood how to actually gain that, advantage. And so I'm actually able to do that at scale. And it's awesome. It's another level of creativity that I've been able to tap into that we've never had in our career, right? Like, I've just been building a design system with Gemini, and it's been building it alongside me. I've been telling it how to build I'm doing one for literally transparency layer of design systems that need it for AI. So that you need a layer that sort of tells people how AI works and, all that sort of stuff. So I'm building a platform that actually has several design patterns that you need to sort of now instigate if you're designing for, responsible AI. And I'm literally doing it with Gemini, and is building the website side by side to actually me just having a chat to it. And I am not doing anything except for knowing what I need to do and being able to sort of, use my know-how of, what needs to be done. and actually just collaborating with it as if I was sitting next to a dev. It's bloody unreal. As you can tell, I get really excited by it.
Pretty good point. Yeah, I'm the same. Like, there's two things I can talk about here. I've been running a business for 13 years. When I first started, I didn't know how to run a business, but I'd have to go out and find people to ask questions. Yeah. Now I'm just like, I don't know a skill set. All right, I'll just ask ChatGPT. I'll work it out, and like, I'm an expert within a week because I can just build my own training manual. But then, like, maybe going back to, like, I think you still need to have a skill set to be able to use it. Like, it's not going to solve your problem. So if you're a senior designer, right, like, you're trained how to see things, understand things, deliver things. It's not going to solve your problems. It's not going to replace you. It's going to enhance what you do. It's going to make you be able to move faster, not necessarily focus on the manual, mundane work, and get to more of the enjoyable, strategic stuff that you should be focusing on. So I'm like, how do you, I guess, people that maybe are starting in just their AI journey now, which hopefully everyone has, but how do you sort of take them on that it is actually just going to enhance you? Like, you've still got to use your skill set to actually get the job done. It's not going to do this for you.
Yeah, for sure. So the second layer, I think, out of that 3 layers, so the second layer is really about how you actually adapt ways of working fundamentally. So I sort of take them through the process of basically saying, okay, let's look at all of your tasks. So for designers, I use jobs to be done. And the reason I use that is because it's goal orientated. And that's exactly the way that large language models and ChatGPT, all that sort of stuff actually work. And so it's similar to, using it for customers, but you're using it for, what you're trying to achieve, right? And so if you can then break apart, a particular task you have to do, every task has subtasks and steps, right? And you can sort of say, okay, firstly, can I use AI to do the entire thing in one go? Probably not, certainly not at this stage, I imagine, and certainly not when you're starting out, right?
There's a lot of issues if you try.
Right. And so you have to sort of pull apart and sort of say, okay, there's 5 steps in this process. Which are the ones that I, human-led, add value to? Now, an example here, and this might be a bit controversial, but I think true, it just might be uncomfortable for people, is that, the skills of design is never been just purely about pixel pushing. It hasn't been. It's about solving problems with pixels, right? And being able to, visualize that, right? But it's not the actual tactical pixel element, right? It's actually the creativity and the problem solving. And so it's about saying, okay, which elements are the parts that AI can do really well? Things that are repeatable, things that it can learn from, with a lot of, examples, etc. And so, but the actual creativity and being able to sort of say, okay, this is the problem over here for customers, and it's got this complexity this is the problem, this is the context of use, etc. All of that stuff, that lived experience that we can relate to, AI will never, ever be able to relate to, right? And so if we can then solve the problem and then work with AI to actually then deliver on a solution, you can kind of sort of say, okay, step 1, I'm going to do, because I'm going to do sort of the research, for example. I'm going to do, it's going to do the transcribing, because that takes bloody forever. And it's not really the transcribing element that's the actual value. It's the actual transcript. And so you don't need to do the transcribing, you just need the transcript, right? And then, so that's how you kind of divide it, right? Sort of thinking about job tasks, etc., is to kind of say, okay, where can I uniquely add value? What is AI good at? And also, what do I enjoy? So when I do I've got a matrix that kind of helps people break apart all their tasks, right? And you sort of score it against certain criteria to sort of see which ones are the best placed and which ones aren't. And one of the ones in the, is it best place for AI is, do you enjoy it? If you enjoy it, I don't care if AI can do it, right? I think just keep it. Like, why would you take the joy out of work? This is about you finding additional things you can do, or lean into and spend more time on the things that actually you add more value in or you enjoy more. It's about taking those little incidental things that over time and, on scale kind of take up 30% of your job.
Yeah.
It could be writing the JIRA ticket, or, could be, putting a message in Slack about the latest, research findings. That part's not the value. The value is the actual, constructing it, delivering it, stakeholder management, all of that stuff you've still got to do. It's just giving you a little bit of extra boost in both, time when you get efficiency, like once you've kind of built that kind of ability to, really offset some of the tasks. But it's really about giving you ability to lean in to things that are either giving you more enjoyment, more value and impact, or giving you that extra capacity so that you, as a business owner with design teams or a client or whatever, you've actually got like an extra 20 odd percent at a minimum, really, honestly, 20% minimum boost, which you can reallocate in one way, shape, or form, right? And you and the individual can actually decide on how that happens. It could be new things that you guys have never been able to actually allocate time towards. It could be professional development. I reckon a lot of it will have to be professional development to keep up, right? Because it's going to keep moving. Like the pace of change is absolutely unbelievable. I work in this 100% of my time, and I can't keep up. I've had to sort of filter it down into certain things because I was just getting overwhelmed, and it does cause anxiety because it's just so much. And so having the ability to just work out what's relevant to you and just let the rest of it wash over you.
When we talk about this as well, right? Like a lot of people just think ChatGPT because it's the one that everyone knows, but there is a million tools that solve small problems, and you work out the more you use AI and finding what task you're going to use it for, there's going to be a tool that's already there that you can go in, and your job almost becomes evaluating tools real quick. You go, all right, it's got a 7-day free trial. I've got 7 days to see if this works. And you could probably tell within an hour or not if it's going to solve your problem. But your job becomes so much about assessing things super quick because ChatGPT is one small fragment of what you're doing. But say if you're trying to do a very specific task, there is a tool that's built on an LLM that is specifically focused on solving that. So it's going to be hyper-focused, way easier, way more efficient, but you're going to have to assess if it's going to help you or not help you. And some are good, some are shit. Lots of shit.
So in tool selection, there's also a few gotchas or warnings just from my own experience. So I've been working in design leadership, as I said, tech forward, etc. So I've had the unenviable task of having to go through probably about 8 to 10 different procurement processes for different companies to bring in tools into my team, right? And I also, coming from a responsible, ethical point of view as well, like I've, over the years, I've definitely had shadow IT going on from my own, use for sure. Absolutely. Find a workaround, right? However, it really has to, you have to stop and think now, right? Because large language models, which is the basis of a lot of this AI technology, obviously there's older school machine learning, but a lot of the, fancy, like the stuff that's kind of getting headlines is generative AI. And that actually requires, firstly, two things. One, a lot of training data. So it's breaching privacy left, right, and center in its training. But secondly, a lot of the tools that are actually being built by companies, you have to think of a couple of things when you actually select tools. One is, are they trustworthy? And I really, really mean this because you need to actually look at the security. You need to look whether or not your interactions are actually being saved and used for training of their actual model. Because if it is, then anything that you put in about work, client work, etc., is actually, being used, and essentially you're breaching privacy by accident, right? And the third one is like, are they going to be around? Like you don't want to start using a tool and then like, they go out of business because they're, that something happens or whatever, they're not a great company or whatever. So, at the moment, there's a lot of big companies that are integrating AI into existing tools. But they're sort of the things that I would be really concerned about. And the other really big one is like, if you are looking at a tool that has obviously some sort of generative AI in it, I would really want to know who the base technology is from, right? So you have to read the terms and conditions. Yep. The reason is because anything that's built on Meta or Grok is automatically saving every interaction for its own use, right? And so, and the thing is, both of them are giving access very cheaply or free to developers. And so a lot of new, like really small scale tools, etc., they're actually starting to be based on Grok or Meta's open source. And those two in particular are actually there's no privacy whatsoever. So they would be some just a bit of tips in terms of selecting tools if I was going to go about doing it now with Teams, etc. So yeah,
interesting. Yeah, like I think from a personal use, like I can chew through tools pretty quickly, but if you're looking
yeah,
at
me
like
too.
enterprise or company, like there's a lot more issues and red tape that you got to worry about. So
Yeah,
you are right. Tools pop up every day. Are they going to
yeah,
be here in 6 months? Probably not, because someone
yeah.
want to build something better, something faster,
Or
something
the
more
big
usable.
tools will start to integrate the things that are really useful for the
Yeah,
people who they serve because they want to keep those customers, right? And so they'll
exactly.
just keep they're just adding, features in. So yeah, it's also got the fact that you want to sort of keep a pretty consistent tool stack. So you're not having to keep learning and learning and learning new tools. But yeah.
Which I think, like, if we go back to maybe design leaders, right? That's something
Mm,
that they need to be thinking about. Like, this is
mm,
probably one of the biggest things they need to be thinking about right now is how do I equip my team with the right tools? But how do I find the right tools that aren't going to breach privacy,
right.
that I'm going to be able to get through a procurement process, it's not going to cause headaches, and are actually going to create efficiencies? Because that's the overall goal here, right? It's creating
Yeah,
efficiencies
obviously.
for your team's time, and then back for the business where you get your funding from.
Right.
But I think we've kind of talked about like some of the steps in creating like AI literacy for an individual or for
Mm.
a team. Like, what are some of the things around designing trustworthy AI? Because I think
So
this is a
that's the
big
third
thing.
layer. Good, good,
Yeah,
good transition for sure.
yeah,
So yeah, so I think that that's something that it definitely needs to be spoken about a lot more. Hence, what I'm doing. But trustworthy AI basically means that it minimizes bias. It is privacy, mindful of privacy. So, obviously there was a trend before AI kind of, swept everyone's sort of, media. There was sort of a trending towards hyper personalization, and AI will 100% make that happen, like
yeah,
without a doubt. Like I use it for my course right now with participants I have, right? It will just extend. However, personalization means it needs more data about you, right? So it's how do you balance those things? So it's trustworthy AI isn't about stopping innovation. In fact, I think every designer would know that designing without constraints, like with no constraints, is actually harder than having constraints to design within, right?
yeah,
And so, having the ability to sort of go, okay, how do we balance personalization and privacy, right? So it might just be that you have you ask users for some of the data and that they want that hyper personalization, right? So they have an opt in, they have nuanced controls about what level of privacy. So do you know how you go into a settings area, sort of example,
yeah,
and there's like one switch on and off, and then you go into another platform or something, and there's like 10, and you've got that micro control.
yeah,
That sort of thing is what you're going to need right now, because there are different layers of what you're willing to actually use for privacy, what they're allowed to use, blah 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 blah. And having designing a deprecated experience for those people who choose privacy over capability, because that is a meaningful choice that someone has, right? So what is our second tier level where they don't have all of the AI fancy capabilities and personalization, but they still have something, right? It's just not super awesome. It was not the most awesome. How do we the biggest one for design for me is transparency, and that is because I think it's still the number one out of all of the principles. So there's 7 principles. Transparency for me is number one, because it actually enables the rest to actually happen in totality. So private transparency is basically the ability for humans, whether that's us as users of an AI, primarily, but also people like developers, QA people, auditors, everyone like that in the back of house as well, are able to actually understand AI's processing of data, what decision it's made, and be able to actually backtrack into how it has, because otherwise you can't check its thinking. You can't check its accuracy. You can't check if it's breaching privacy. And so therefore you as a user, you as a, someone on the tools, is not able to actually have meaningful control. Like, you just can't. If you're supposed to be cooperating with someone, and if it was a person and they won't tell you anything, and you have to tell them as much as what you need to work, and they just, they brick wall you any access to information, and they just tell you their answer, and you go, okay, but why? And you're like,
I'm going to use an
because.
analogy on this, right?
It's because, it's like when parents say because, it's when you ask why,
When
Yeah.
when I was in, like, I think, like, let's say year 8 maths, I was really good at maths, so I could go, all right, this equals that, and then the teacher would be like, how did you get to that answer? I was like, well, I just did. But like, it almost looks like you're cheating, because you're like, show me the formula. How did you actually get to this? And a lot of platforms, right, they're scared of giving away the
Correct.
thinking behind getting to the outcome, because then someone else can come in and copy exactly what they've done, rebuild it. So, like, how do you get around that when using or choosing a platform to use or choosing a tool to use? Because most people don't want to give away that process or that
Special
data.
source, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's levels of abstraction, and what I mean by that is that when you tell someone, for example, that the reason they're, like Spotify is a good example of, like, the reason you're being recommended this, in your weekly thingo is because your weekly, whatever it's called, album or whatever, is because you like, Coldplay, and you've been playing, XYZ and stuff like that. That is a layer of transparency, right? So that is telling you why it's recommending it to you. And it's not telling you the actual formula of how it does it. It's not telling you the percentage of, confidence it has in that, recommendation to you. So the actual special source about how it operates is not actually the answer it gives you, right? But it still gives you enough information for you to actually understand roughly what's happening, right? You can actually see it now thanks to DeepSeek when they, launched. I don't use that, but they had that. No,
I
again,
played with it, right? It's like I gave it a couple of hours of my time. I was like, oh, it's cool.
Again, privacy. I'm just like, nah. But you can see it in all, like, that, all the other large language models, as far as I know, have implemented it. And that is that when you actually do a chat with them, while it's thinking, and then when it gives you your answer, there's usually like some sort of way you can do a drop down of something where you can see what it's actually going through the process of what it's doing. That is transparency, right? It's not telling you the secret sauce behind it in terms of, all of the, connections it's making beyond what it's telling you. It's telling you enough that you can actually work out whether or not it's doing what you're asking it to do, or where's the, if there's an error, you're like, like, that's where it's misinterpreted me. I can now I've got the choice or the, capacity to actually edit that and give it feedback and say, this isn't what you should have done. This part is one. Can you do it again, kind of deal. So that's kind of transparency layer. So is things like, like the up and down feedback, next to a chat. Usually like in ChatGPT or Claude or something, when it gives you an answer down the bottom where you've got copy, it's usually got like a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh, yeah.
And that is just like a very micro feedback thing. If you put a thumbs down, it usually asks you why. So it can kind of, add that back into its own training capacity.
Do you ever use that feature? 'Cause it's not
I
something
did initially. I don't really use it now unless it's really disastrous.
I did it like on image creation, but like it didn't help me. Like, I think I'm
It
just
doesn't help you it doesn't help you in the moment. It helps the training model. It gives the feedback and it takes it back in, months later. Like, it doesn't help you whatsoever. It helps the training model. Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
so that's transparency. So, design, and that is the design layer. So this really is both the most important because, even from internally, if you're part of the design team, the developers, if it's a black box, they can't even tell the decision making, right? Like they might have like a use case and they say, okay, this is the data we're putting in. This is the answer out here. They're like, does that look accurate to us externally? Yeah. Can we check? No. So that's a black box. So that's the alternative to, transparency. And this is something we can absolutely do as design teams. So fundamentally, this is what I would love design teams around Australia to start doing, right? There's only a handful of new components that you need into your design system. I'll rattle off a couple, right?
Okay.
One, AI presence. So you'll see often, do you know how we used to, when mobiles first came out, there was that, 3-line mobile menu, and everyone,
Yeah.
it
The
took a while for
hamburger.
people to work it out, like, particularly, our parents, etc., to work out that actually means the menu.
Yeah, the hamburger. That's what it's called,
Yeah,
isn't it?
right. So similar to that, but you'll see on AI systems now, a lot of them are actually using a similar symbol. So it looks like little like stars, like little kind of stars, or something like that. That kind of looks like it's magic, like that kind of spell kind of thing. You'll
Oh
see it
yeah.
on Figma. Yeah, like, so that's a presence. So AI is being used in that particular feature. So that's the other thing. So it needs to be about like what it's specifically about. So not just that there's AI in this whole platform, but where in the experience is AI happening. And like, if I use this feature here, that's where the AI is. If I use this feature over here, it's not in that part, right? It's just the standard, coding over that way.
Yep.
So that's one.
Canva's done a very good job of this. If you've used Canva
Yeah,
AI,
yeah,
it's
right,
quite
yeah,
new. I'm
yeah,
actually speaking with them about that next week, so that'll be cool. But yeah, they've done a really good job of obviously
yeah,
showing you exactly where they're using it and how they're
yeah.
using it, so you can click on it.
Yeah, so that one. So presence indicator. Another one is another really important one is to understand as well from design perspective is that every single AI, whether it's generative, whether it's old school, is a prediction engine. And so with predictions, like just like maths, right? There's a percentage that it's going to get wrong. Like there's a percentage of confidence, and there's a percentage that it's not confident, right? And so you actually have to, particularly if it's something that is business orientated, health, finance, it's really important for those ones that people really need that understanding of how confident that prediction is. So if you are predicting someone's super balance, for example, in 5 years' time, obviously you can kind of do some prediction on that, but some prediction will go wrong because real world circumstances like tariffs coming in will absolutely not have been accounted for a year ago, right? So that is something that in the real world it didn't actually play out the way maybe those expectations were, and so you need a percentage indicator of some description, whether it's a circle indicator, whether it's just a number, something like that, that actually says this prediction is 98% accurate. In a health scenario, that might not be accurate enough.
Yep.
In a Spotify example, that's perfectly fine. But you need to give people the actual information so they can determine how much they should trust it. Every single AI is operating differently, different layer. And so you actually, as an individual, and obviously your users, need to know how much they can trust it. And all of these things build trust, right? Because they have you giving people the power to make decisions is actually giving them the ability to start to trust you, because I can actually understand what's happening and I can make decisions for myself based on that information.
That was a really good analogy, because like depending what you look, if it's Spotify and it's 98%, right? Great, that's all good, but it's not life threatening.
It's not
So
life
if a
threatening.
health scenario, you're like, well, I want this to be 99.9, but it's something that's a very clear indicator of, is this trustworthy or is it not trustworthy, right? Like, because if it's like a 70%, you might have a 70% of chance of having this. You're like, well, I'll take my chances. It's okay. If it's 99.9, it's like, oh shit, I'll listen to this. All right, good, we're good.
Yeah. And the same with the feedback, right? Like, so, whenever you give some information to a user, it's about collaboration. I think that's the real shift that we have to think about from a design perspective, right? Is that we're no longer building stationary platforms that users experience. We're building for collaboration between humans and AI. And yes, we might have been trying to do that to some degree with user experience, but here's the real difference. AI is a learning system. It changes rapidly. It learns from every single interaction, right? And so does a human. So it's basically like you collaborating with an intern, right? Or like someone else, right? And so you need clear indicators of that, what their decision making is, so that you can actually collaborate back with them. Like, so it's a two-way exchange. And so the transparency layer is enabling that two-way exchange. So it's feedback, it's confidence indicators, it's, what data sources it's using, really critical.
Yeah. When they
Is it?
started including links and stuff like that to, like,
Yeah,
let's say if you're doing a research piece and back at the start you'd have the hallucinations and you just
yeah.
get this random bogus answer back. You try and like fact check it. You're like, I don't know where this came from. But now that they include links to like research pieces and you can actually click out and go, all right, there's a study to back this up. Like,
And you still
easy.
have to click on them
Yeah.
because
Half of them
because
don't work sometimes.
well, in ChatGPT, yeah, half of them are totally dodgy. That's why I use Perplexity. And the second one is
Same.
I've actually even followed them through for some things when I've really wanted to check accuracy, and I've just been like, I use Control Find in like a PDF or something and
Yep.
you cannot find it, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to have that ability, and have that nuanced ability to sort of check that accuracy. If you're doing a customer success thing, what information is it looking at in your payments history? What information is it looking about your accounts? All that sort of jazz. And having the ability to have the granular controls, and having that layer that gives you meaningful interaction and meaningful collaboration, because that's what we're designing for now, is collaboration. And the fundamental thing that humans rely on for collaboration is trust. And so
Yeah.
that's what trustworthy AI is, right? So the three layers that I mentioned was, one is AI literacy, which every single person, regardless of whether you're in design or not, you need, right? And so that's just building your capacity to actually, engage with AI and it's not just at work. And that's the other thing I want people to understand is that AI is going to be, it's already, a part of, half of the systems you probably use every day, including
100%.
your personal life, your work. Kids, they're now going to be, education is actually one of the forward leading industries. And so kids are going to be learning differently to parents. And so if you are not actually keeping up with that as a parent, you're kind of in a different, paradigm. Like you're not really sure what's going on. You can't keep them safe. You can't sort of make sure that they're actually getting accurate answers and not actually being, lied to or, manipulated and stuff like that. Even to government, right? Government industry right now is actually implementing AI into different platforms in the back end. That means as citizens, we need to know that, we can actually do that. All of those things pretty much assume that AI is going to be in every piece of technology that you use every day between now and the next 3 years. And think about that. If
Sooner. I would say it's gonna just be a flip on its head, right? Like, you've got a lot of companies that are really slow to the uptake of this, but it's just gonna get to a point where it's like everyone goes, we are so behind the eight ball and it needs to happen right now. Shit, if
yeah,
government is starting to use AI, you should definitely be using AI. They're the
yeah,
slowest
for
guys to uptake.
sure. I think that's really important for people to understand is that, and imagine if even half of them are not trustworthy and you still have to use it. Imagine if 90%, which I would say that's generous at the moment, I would say, less than 10% would be built with trustworthy, responsible AI principles at their core. And that is friggin' terrifying. That is why I actually started AI Flywheel. It was because, when I did an ethics of AI course, I was doing it mainly so I knew that when I was working in AI in the future, as in leading design teams,
Yep.
I would make sure that we're minimizing harm, because that's always been, a thing for me. And what I found out was like, holy crap, Batman. The risk is enormous, and there really isn't anything out there for people who are in design, who are in the front line, the people who are making the micro decisions every day about what data's used, what data's not used, actually doing, bias checking right at the discovery phase, how we're designing for it. Have we designed the transparency well so that everyday people can understand what's going on and they can make decisions for them in their own personal life. How are we testing it? So there's new research testing protocols that we have to do to actually test AI to its fullest extent and make sure of these things pre-launch. When we're deploying it, how it changes over time. So even if you've deployed something safely, it actually learns, remember? And so it's learning in deployment. which means there's something called model drift. And so it's not just one and done technology either. You actually have to continue to audit and retrain and retest, etc., because it is learning from every single interaction. And so it's a really different paradigm. And so we have to design that entire design practice in a different way now to actually enable us to actually deliver trustworthy AI to our customers. So it's massive uplift, and more than even just everyday people in their other white collar jobs. Like, if we're designing these systems, we are responsible. We've got our hands on the wheel, and we're responsible one way or another about whether or not our family, our friends, everyone we love is using technology that is breaching privacy, that is biased against them, that is unfair, and that they are manipulated by. All of that is our decisions.
True.
One way or another.
I'm gonna just sort of wrap this podcast up. Let's talk about now the responsibilities as a design leader, right? You've got, yes, you were leading teams, but now you've got to bring in AI into a team. You've got to oversee it. You've got to look at the tools that they're using. You've got to make sure your team are using it in the right way. You've got to make sure there's ethics in there. Like, where does a design leader start? Like, how do they oversee this?
Well, similarly, I think that there's probably several layers. One is their own literacy.
The short answer.
Their own literacy, man. Like, seriously, their own literacy is number one, because if they're not building their AI literacy right now at a real foundational level, they are not going to see risks. They're also not going to push their team and see opportunities to extend themselves. They're not going to know which technology is good and bad to implement and why. They're not going to know how to actually adapt their design operations, both tactically, but also strategically. Because the thing is that this is also different in another way, that for a change, it's happening so rapidly and it's not stopping.
Yeah.
And so what do you need to do with design practice design, or design, rhythms, or design, what do you need to do for your team to strategically position itself to continue to adapt? Because that is an entirely different paradigm than we've ever had before, right? Because as this continues to change, if we're leading the way in terms of designing systems like this, or knowing how to leverage this in creative ways, right, we actually need to make sure that we're at the forefront of that, knowing where it's going and things like that. And so actually designing the practice to be flexible and to continue to adapt and help people psychologically. This is a huge change, and I think that that's also undersold, right? From a leader's perspective, there is a huge emotional change because people have to start reckoning with who they, what value they bring. If AI can do, half of my job, a third of my job, depends on what your job is, but like a third of my job, a half of my job, what value am I doing? What is my identity in this space now? And that's an emotional thing. And that is something that leaders also have to reckon with, not just for themselves, but also for their teams. And, defending their teams, FTEs. Like, we all know that, everyone can see the writing on the wall, right? That, companies will try to downsize when and where they can and take advantage. And so as design leaders, I know I've had to defend, why we've got the team capacity we have. Asking for additional team members now is almost like impossible from what I've been talking to design leaders, right? So it's not so much
I run
just
a
about
consultancy,
asking for
budgets
new ones.
are slightly tight.
Huh?
I said I run a design consultancy. Budgets have been relatively tight, but hey, you can save money if you bring us in.
Yeah, and so that's something that design leaders need to actually be able to articulate the additional value that their team's being able to do, or be able to prove it. So, what metrics now can we actually leverage to actually prove the necessary part of it? How do we actually, say that we actually need user research because it's human and AI? AI doesn't know the human. We need the research. Like, being able to actually articulate this to executives is actually going to be a pivotal part for design leaders to even keep their teams at this current capacity, let alone being able to ask for new people. So that is all those skill sets is in and above what your design team needs.
I feel like as designers or design leaders, yes, you got to be upskilling in AI, but it also is going to be that communication superpower that you've got, because you've got to still be able to communicate what's happening, how it's happening, why decisions are being made in their language, not in design language. So you need to be able to still communicate to the stakeholders. And that's one of the cool things about designers, right? Like, they are able to work with every unit of a business to like take them on that journey. And I think that's where every designer needs to get. Like, the craft is great to understand, but AI is going to obviously make that a lot easier. You've still got to be able to communicate what you're doing on a different level. But Riley, wrapping it up there, it's been so much fun having a chat with you. Obviously, we speak pretty regular anyway. But like, AI Flywheel, if anyone wants to reach out, is the best way to hit you up on LinkedIn, check your website out.
Yeah, mate. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Riley Coleman, or AI Flywheel is website is ai-flywheel.com.
I'll leave some links in the show podcast notes. So
no worries.
Once again, absolute pleasure.
Yeah, mate. Cheers. Thank you for having me on. Have a good day.
Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you hit subscribe. Also, leave us a comment and a like. It helps people like yourself find this video.